Hello beautiful people, my name is Vendi and today I'm here to bring you another episode of Bookie Cookin. If you're unfamiliar with what this series is, I'll have a playlist with the others linked below. Basically, I recreate tasty treats that I found while reading certain books. Today's treat is brought less by a book and more by a character, and today's character is Nina Zenik from the Six of Crows duology and the recently released King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. All these books take place in Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse, which is a world in which there are people born with magic of one of three types. There are the Materialki, people who can like tinker and do tool smithing and stuff like that. Basically, they're really good at crafting. There are the Etherealki, and these guys are basically like airbenders and waterbenders and firebenders and the like. And the third type is the Corporalki. These guys are sort of like blood witches. They can either heal or hurt you very, very badly. Our pal Nina is a Corporalki. She is of the class of Heartrender, meaning she's basically a perfect soldier. But you wouldn't guess it looking at her. She is just beautiful and decadent and really into eating a bunch of delicious, tasty treats. In fact, the first time we meet her in Six of Crows, she is snacking on vanilla cake, and that is what we are going to be making today, with a bit of a twist. I'm not going to spoil anything for those of you who maybe haven't read the Six of Crows duology or this hunker yet, but Nina and vanilla are two words that really don't belong together on the same page, you know? So instead of a vanilla cake, I'm going to do a flavor combination that I think that our lovely Nina would be super into, and that is a blackberry lemon vanilla cake, covered in all sorts of decadent fruits and chocolates later. I chose this because Nina can be a sour, sassy little thing, hence the lemon, but most of the time she is wonderful and sweet, like blackberries. It makes sense. All right, we've got a bit of a big recipe. I think this is the biggest and most time-intensive one that I've done on here so far, so let's just jump right into it. Though it's gonna take a while, this recipe isn't all that difficult ingredients-wise. For the cake, you only need 4 ingredients. You'll need 6 large eggs, a cup of granulated sugar, 1 cup of all-purpose flour measured correctly, I'll show you what that means when we get to it, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. To make the syrup, you'll need 3/4 cup of warm water, obviously I'll get that from my sink, a tablespoon of granulated sugar, and 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. And for the frosting, you'll need 1½ cups of granulated sugar, not powdered, 7 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 1½ cups milk, 1½ tablespoons of pure vanilla extract, 1½ cups of butter, a pinch of salt, 1 cup of mixed berries, and half a package of blackberries. Finally, to decorate the top of the cake, use the other half of those blackberries, a case of strawberries, and whatever other assorted fruit you think will complement the flavors and make it look absolutely decadent when you decorate the top of your cake. To start off, preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Additionally, grease a pan. The best would be 2 8x8s, but I only have this bad boy. It won't matter once I've cut it. What really matters is that when you grease it, you use butter instead of Pam so that your cake can come out as easily as possible. And that's when the fun begins. After you've preheated your oven, you're gonna crack your 6 eggs into a large mixing bowl, and you're gonna beat them on high for about 1 minute. Once they're kind of fluffy, you're gonna take a cup of sugar and start adding it to the egg mixture while you beat for 8 to 10 minutes. So this bit takes a while. There's some people who can do this single-handed. I am not one of them. I suppose I could be with some practice, but I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. I've got 2 healthy hands, so I'm gonna use them for as long as I've got them. A minute later, your eggs will be all mixed together and fluffy, and that's when you start adding your sugar. Again, this stage of the beating takes about 10 minutes, so I don't know, maybe put some headphones in and listen to the Six of Crows audiobook while you're at it. So here's a friendly little voiceover as we beat these eggs. Basically, the reason you're doing this in the first place is because you need those eggs to give your cake lift. The baking powder is a leavening agent, meaning it's gonna rise the cake a lot, but what's really gonna do it is the air that you've beaten in with these eggs. You don't wanna skimp out on this. You want them to get as fluffy as possible. Scrambled egg mixture is not what you're going for. You're going for like this pale white, cloudy looking stuff. You'll see it when I'm done. Once the egg and sugar mixture has fluffed up beautifully like this, then you can continue. That'd be the cake. Once it's finished cooking, put on some gloves worthy of Kaz Brecker too soon, and pull that bad boy out. Look at that. Do you see that? Do you see how much that rose? That's why we beat those eggs. Once this bad boy's out, you are gonna want to loosen it up at the ends. If you have a nice offset spatula, you should probably use that. I'm using the knife that I'm going to use to cut it later. Basically just to make it let go of the pan a little bit, because it rose higher than the line of butter that I put down. It actually rose way more than I initially anticipated, which is good. You want it to rise as much as possible, because that means more cake. But that also means it's harder to flip out. So loosen that bad boy up. And the way I do this, because I'm clumsy, is I actually flip my wire rack on top and then turn the whole thing over and lose a glove. That's fine. Well, I guess I didn't butter enough. Sometimes plain A doesn't always work. Kind of like in Six of Crows, if you've read the duology. I really can't talk about these books because so many spoilers. But basically, sometimes plan A doesn't work. So pro tip for you guys from future Bendy, if you can line your pan with baking paper or parchment paper, whatever it's called, that might make this switcheroo a little easier. It's lifting now from all sides, so it should be able to come out a little easier. I love how jiggly this is. It's one of those Japanese cheesecakes. I'm really excited to eat this. Masterpiece. Oh my god. This is gonna be so good. Once you've successfully gotten your cake onto the drying rack, sorry, not the drying rack, the cooling rack, that is when you start to make the little bits that are gonna go on top of your cake, starting with the lemon syrup. So lemon syrup is pretty easy. All you do is take 3/4 of a glass of water, stir in some sugar once it's nice and warm, and then add in the lemon juice, half of what you've squeezed out into your little lemon juice squeezer thingy. Yep, hot. Okay, perfect. You take a tablespoon of sugar, add that sucker in, stir until it's all dissolved. It'll look a little milky, because that's what happens when you dissolve minerals into hot water. And once it's all combined, you add in your lemon juice. Oh, that's way too much lemon juice. Oops. Basically, you're just making the most concentrated possible sort of lemonade. Once it's done, you can set it to the side because you won't need it until you're frosting your cake. And then it's time for my personal favorite part, the frosting making. To start off with, you are going to take a little saucepan and fill it with 1.5 cups of milk and 7 tablespoons of flour. If you're tired and lazy like me, while you do this, you might want to bring a chair over and just sit down. Before you turn the heat on for this, you're going to want to whisk together the cold milk and the flour so that there aren't any lumps when this is done. What you want is a very smooth, sort of pasty sort of consistency to make sure that your frosting is nice and thick. And since this is one of the last quiet steps of this recipe, I'm gonna finish telling you what I wanted to start telling you about Nina. So by now you definitely know that I think she's a baller, an absolute badass, everything I want to be with my life. But the real reason I chose her for the inspiration for this Bookie Cookin is because Nina loves food. She loves food in the same way that I love food, and it's not very often that when I read a fantasy, which is my favorite sort of book, that I encounter characters that are just so in love with food and eating the way that I am. That looks good. Let's turn on the stove top. We're gonna put it at about a medium heat so it doesn't curdle. And you're just gonna stir consistently until it's ready. I'm gonna not pay attention because I know what it's gonna feel like when it's done. Ignore that this looks ridiculous. We're gonna roll with it while I talk to you about this amazing character. So Nina is a plus size badass bitch. There's not a room that Nina Zenik walks into and thinks, wow, I'm the second best looking person in here. Unless, of course, Inej is there, and then, you know, it's all about, you know, girl power and uplifting her best friend who is also the baddest bitch in the game. But regardless, Nina is so far from ashamed of her plus size body, and we never see that in literature, so I'm just delighted that Leigh Bardugo took it there. And I'm delighted that she's not like, oh, you know, I'd never eat, but I still have gained weight. Like, no. She eats food because food's delicious. And her body, at the end of eating all that delicious food, still banging. She's not afraid to be who she is and love what she loves, and though I might not look like her, I do share those traits, at least in a very aspirational way. Personally, I think that Nina would love Bookie Cookin because baked desserts, and nerdy references, and you guys can't tell me that Nina wouldn't be like a low-key nerd if she lived in a contemporary existence. Like, make no mistake, she would win prom queen, but she would also like platinum more games than the average guy at her school owned. This is starting to thicken up. And I'm completely in love with Nina Zenik. I'm so excited that we get to continue her story in King of Scars and its sequel. And I am so excited for the Netflix adaptation of the Grishaverse books minus King of Scars. And they better keep Nina plus size. That is like, if nothing else, well, they better keep Inej and Jesper Brown, and they better keep Nina plus size. And this is almost done. Let's lower that heat so it doesn't curdle. This is going to have a consistency something like pudding. Basically, when you lift out your stirring device, you want there to be, yeah, like a nice, thick string of flour milk paste. God, when I think about it, it doesn't sound at all appealing, but then when I look at it, it looks like vanilla pudding, so I'm conflicted. Either way, oh yeah, that's done. Once it's finished, set it aside to cool. While you're waiting for the milk flour mixture to cool a little bit to room temperature, what you want to do is cream together your 1.5 cups of butter, your 1.5 cups of sugar, and your pinch of salt. You want to cream this until it's nice and fluffy because this is like a pseudo buttercream icing. It takes a while, but it is well worth it. Yet again, just be patient. While you're beating that, you can do a little bit of multitasking by taking your various fruits plus about 1/3 of your blackberries and putting them into a little saucepan along with half of your lemon syrup mixture. Also, don't forget to add your lemon zest. Basically put that on the stove top on a medium to low heat and just let it simmer until it's ready to be incorporated into the rest of your frosting. At this point, because you've added the warm berries into the mixture, it might be a little bit wet. So what you're going to want to do with this is stick it into the fridge or the freezer for about an hour or up to overnight. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how to slice and dice that cake into a vaguely cake-shaped thing. If you did the 2 pans method, then you just cut your 2 circles in half lengthwise. But if you did the 9x14 method, the way I did, first cut it in half widthwise. Once you've done that, your cake is more or less ready to assemble and decorate. So it's pretty late when I decided to film this, and my energy levels are at an all-time low. So I didn't really talk for the rest of this video. It's going to be time-lapsed, but the rest of it's really just decorating the cake, and you don't need any instruction regarding that. Basically, the last thing you want to do is clean up your fruit, make sure to give it a rinse, and cut up what you want to cut up to put on top of and inside of the cake. I'm going to be using a mixture of strawberries, blackberries, banana, and plum. And I'm lucky enough that my love of my life, who was the one that orchestrated my hairstyle change, Marco, is going to be helping me decorate this cake before we eat it. It's going to be awesome. And that is it for this episode of Bookie Cooking. Thank you so much for following along with me. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you like me, maybe consider subscribing to this channel. There will be more Bookie Cookins, probably at least once every couple months. That said, I don't really read all that many books that have like very specific recipes tied into them. So please, 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 if you read a book where you are just like absolutely enthralled by the descriptions of the food, please comment it down below so that I can give it a read and introduce it into this series for you guys. All right, I think that's it for me. I'm gonna go have some cake now. We're having cake for breakfast. Oh my god. She's a mess, but she's delicious. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you next Saturday. Goodbye.